year was 2016. 12 years after Godzilla took what could have been his last walk off into the sunset in Godzilla Final Wars, and the King of the Monsters' fate for the future was up in the air. Final Wars was supposed to be the last time we would see Godzilla under the reins of Toho in maybe ever, his big send-off. But a wise alien once said, "Were it so easy." Legendary in their first entry into the Monsterverse, Godzilla 2014, stomped the box office and revived interest in both the Godzilla brand and the kaiju genre, all right on the heels of Pacific Rim's success. For the first time in decades, giant monsters were cool again. And now, after over a decade, Toho was ready to get back into the game. Out of the chaos of unfortunate natural disasters and through the minds of its creators, Shin Godzilla was born. This was Toho's big swing at showing that Godzilla was alive and kicking across the globe, and not just in Hollywood. They weren't about to be left behind and forgotten to time. Shin Godzilla released with significant success in Japan, becoming the highest-grossing Godzilla movie in the G-Man's home country, and it achieved critical acclaim for its realistic tone, fantastic effects, and its cultural impact regarding the Fukushima disaster. But across the planet, Shin Godzilla was more mixed in its reception. Audiences were split, but it seemed that outside of Japan, moviegoers found the focus on bureaucracy to be too different from modern monster films, which prioritize simple storytelling with mind-blowing action. Without the connection to the natural disaster Shin Godzilla was referring to, non-Japanese viewers didn't have that emotional connection with the plot of the story. This, when thrown together with Shin's unique but jarring visual design, was just less appealing than many thought it should be. Loved or hated, Shin Godzilla made a lot of money and got Japan back on the map in the industry and showed that they were to be taken seriously and could hold their own with Hollywood. And with the 4K release of Shin Godzilla in theaters, and the rumors of a potential sequel to Shin Godzilla being in production, I went back to this revolutionary movie to see where it stands today. I can't wait to rip into this retrospective, but you gotta make sure and subscribe to the channel or else Shin Godzilla 2 is never gonna be made, and that would suck, right? Say what you want about the movie, there's a lot to praise here. I'm a big fan of films that really nail the build-up and tension that comes from a disaster, and Shin does that from the get-go, bringing you right into this insane scenario. Through that first act, I found myself getting a good chuckle at all the silly explanations the government was coming up with for why there's this insane thing going on in the water. And all of it really does make you think about the shortcomings of our leaders, especially when shit hits the fan. I'd be pissed too if my fate was handled like these people handle the appearance of Godzilla, so I understand why the Japanese people really resonated with this story. But while it's interesting and dare I say riveting at first, this aspect of Shin Godzilla's storytelling does become a bit sluggish as the film goes on. Every time we cut back to the people in a room, changing to another room and then another room just so more and more secrets could be kept from those who weren't high enough ranking members to be in the know and in that current room. Seriously, if the government does that in real life, we're so fucked. By the time of the last act, you almost gotta beg the movie gods to please get back to the event at hand and Godzilla. So even after a decade now, the bureaucracy aspect to Shin Godzilla is still something mostly only people from Japan or people who enjoy high drama stories can truly appreciate. It's without a doubt something that you can understand why people don't enjoy this movie. But this grounded in reality tone to Shin Godzilla, once it's strayed away from the politics and more into the theme of humanity being attacked by this insane monster, really starts to shine. The grittiness of this movie is refreshing to see in 2025, where the majority of movies are overly bright and colorful, almost cartoony. The real-world setting, natural lighting, and filters used in Shin Godzilla gives the movie a vibe that I can really only describe as eerily cozy. Yeah, not two words that usually go together, but for Shin Godzilla, that's how I feel. This, combined with some, dare I say, crafty editing and cinematography, gives the Godzilla franchise some of its best moments from a visual sense. I don't know how many times I thought to myself, damn, that was a cool shot when rewatching Shin Godzilla. There's a few camera angles in this movie that really make the whole idea come to life. The scale Toho captures is just top of the line. But even though we got a lot of cool POV style shots of people on the ground, there's not one main character that ever really actually puts themselves in danger in this movie. And to think about it, decent writing and solid acting aside, the human characters in Shin Godzilla live up to their reputation of being forgettable and in the way of Godzilla and the action. Nothing against the actors and actresses, they did fine, and there's some cool enough characters for the type of people that they are. Working in the government can only make you so likable after all. But these people are just hiding in a room barely within range of the danger. I understand why they did this, to show the lackluster side of the government. But in the end, no one's likable and no one does much of anything, and that eventually got me feeling burnt out on the human side of things in Shin Godzilla. What's crazy though is that once we leave the safe little politicians and get to the brave people who are actually out there trying to stop Godzilla, the movie bursts to life. The military aspects of Shin Godzilla specifically are some of, if not the best in the entire series. You don't have to be a gun nut or an avid learner of World War II history to see a bunch of tanks lining up and firing to be like, alright, hell yeah. The damage or lack thereof they did to Godzilla doesn't matter. Ultimately, I just love seeing the full force of humanity on display. And for a country that doesn't have a modern military, they sure know how to make these machines look badass and authentic. What's crazy is that it's not just the boots on the ground aspect that hits a home run here. The entire last act is one of those crazy plans put into motion to stop Godzilla that Toho has made so famous over the years. And they stop Godzilla using nothing but brain power and wit, and a whole bunch of explosives. Setting up an elaborate trap to get Godzilla right where he needed to be, using trains and bombs over tanks and missiles, they drop Shin Godzilla to the floor. Just like Godzilla -1, this scene made me feel some form of fellow human pride. Like when we stop with the nonsense and just put our minds together for one goal, we can do almost anything, even if that anything is giving Godzilla a deadly case of brain freeze. Let's talk about this take on Godzilla now. Probably what could be considered as the second most controversial live-action Godzilla design behind the 1998 one. Everyone has their favorite Godzilla, and there's no true best Goji design. And hate is a strong word, but I hate Shin Godzilla's design. I've learned how to respect it, and it's not the sort of thing I'll argue about because it's not that big of a deal, but googly-eye Goji just doesn't do it for me. Luckily, even with his bad case of arthritis-looking ass, I can say I enjoy this Godzilla. Every time Shin Godzilla is on screen, he demands attention, even if it is just to look at how disgusting this thing is. This take on Godzilla really doesn't do much of anything other than walk around menacingly.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Even compared to the original dude in a suit from the 50s, Shin Godzilla is stiff and lifeless. Which would bother me more if the creators of Shin didn't put in the work to ensure the audience understood this Godzilla was supposed to be this mummy-like freak of nature. Shin Godzilla doesn't move or act like a living creature, and while that can be off-putting to purists of Godzilla, it sure does make Shin unique, so there's that to consider. One thing I didn't really think about the first couple of times I watched Shin Godzilla was how that originally this monster was supposed to be an animatronic to sort of pay homage to the dudes in suit legacy of the franchise. During production though, Toho quickly learned this animatronic wasn't going to cut it, so they committed to CGI. With a smaller budget and little time to bring Shin Godzilla to life now, deciding to make the monster embody this rigid, unsettling beast whose existence alone is supposed to be impossible, helped, at least from what I perceive, to make the movie look better. A lot of these smaller mistakes and issues with this speedy animation process that Shin had to get this movie out can be overlooked because the entire way this take on Godzilla was designed allowed the sometimes choppy and uncanny appearance and movement to mask the animation shortcomings. If Shin Godzilla moved more lifelike, like MonsterVerse Godzilla for example, the final product would suffer because to the eye, these realistic movements would take far too much time to make from a production standpoint, so they would rush them, and we would see and say to ourselves, that sure as hell looks fake. So there's something to be said about how good Shin Godzilla looks when he's thrown into these real locations. Even with the monster's more outlandish design, the environment around blends really well with it, I think. Overall, the CGI in Shin Godzilla is really solid for a lower budget foreign film, and this was the best the Toho series had seen till Godzilla -1 came around. And all of this came centerfold during what some call the greatest Godzilla atomic blast scene in history. Around the halfway point of the movie, Shin Godzilla unleashes its fury. Everything that helped build this scene up, building that tension of what's to come, is damn near flawless. The contrast of colors, the shadow and lighting, the camera angles, it all hits hard, guys. And then they thought to give the cherry on top. The music and sound design throughout Shin Godzilla is interesting. There's some really fresh new sound effects, but in true Toho fashion, they still reuse some sound effects from the original Godzilla early days. And I'll always respect that, but I will say it was weird to hear some tanks have this booming, modern sound design, and then the next time you see them they sound like air guns because they use the effects from 60 years prior. And in the case of the famous atomic porcupine scene, the eerie orchestral music, which you might think wouldn't fit this scene, actually amplifies it to hit levels of epicness that it wouldn't get with more generic music. The music helps everything feel all the more tense, like we are watching this really stressful game of chess between humanity and a monster. Really good stuff. From the effects, the sound design, music, to the clever way certain scenes were composed, Shin Godzilla did what it set out to do. And by the time it was all said and done, we got a film that gave respect to the legacy of Godzilla and managed to stand out on its own still, becoming a cult hit to certain audiences, and to this day is still one of the most highly sought out topics when it comes to making Godzilla content online. Give the video a like if you came here for Shin Godzilla. And I think a lot of this probably has to do with how the film set up a sequel and maybe even a series for it to then just be cancelled. The mystery of how this series could have gone seems to have made a lot of people crave the monster more, wanting to learn more and more about it and make all these crazy theories. And on that note, here's my final thoughts on Shin Godzilla. This is a movie that came so close to being an iconic piece of film history. It told a story that was faithful to Godzilla's past, his actions, and the real-life events that were the catalysts for his creation. But ultimately, its unique but not so visually appealing design and the level of focus on the bureaucracy surrounding what to do with Godzilla dragging the film out and making it a bit dull at times prevented Shin Godzilla from reaching levels of success that we've seen Godzilla -1 achieve. I have to admit though that the build up to Shin Godzilla appearing was sick, literally. I would have loved to have seen more perspectives from people on the ground during his rampage. I really do think that would have made this movie more interesting for more people overall. Even with all this criticism, Shin Godzilla is one of my favorite Goji films, and I think it does deserve to have its place in the legacy of Godzilla. I'll end the video with this closing statement. In modern times, Shin Godzilla is the forgotten middle child of Godzilla movies. The MonsterVerse and -1 versions get much of the attention and praise, but Shin Godzilla is still here and is thriving. This movie and variation of Godzilla has a huge, passionate fanbase, with fans who are still mad that a sequel was cancelled, at least for now. It all makes sense in the end. Shin Godzilla is the epitome of a cult classic film, which, if you think about it, is exactly what Godzilla has always been. I hope you enjoyed this spotlight on Shin Godzilla, everyone. If you had a good time, make sure and leave a like, subscribe, and share the video around to your friends. I'd like to get back into doing more videos like this, so let me know what you would like to see next and how a series like this could improve. Give me some feedback. I appreciate you all, and have a good one. This has been Jacob. I'll see you in the next one.